Library here on East Falls. And so I'm just going to take a moment to introduce our speaker, which I'm sure most of you already know, but it's nice to give a formal introduction, right? Evan Laine is an associate professor of history here on the East Falls campus at Thomas Jefferson University. He's a program director of Law and Society major and faculty director for the Arlen Specter Center. Previously, Laine was an attorney specializing in civil trial law.
I am.
He has written and lectured in the fields of conspiracy theory and civil laws. In 2015, he authored the book Nixon and the Dragon Lady. Did Richard Nixon conspire with Anna Chanot, thank you, in 1986 to destroy peace in Vietnam? His article, National Security, Personal Insecurity, and Political Conspiracies, The Persistence of Americans' Beliefs in 9/11 Conspiracy Theories, was featured in the Washington Post. And today we will hear Laine speak about his most recent book, Arlen Specter, Scandal, Conspiracies, and Crisis in Focus. Please join me in welcoming Evan Laine.
Thank you. I want to thank all my students who are here. Thank you so much for coming. And I want to thank people from the University of Pittsburgh who also on the other side. I'll say why in a second. I want to thank Arlen Specter's son, Laine Specter, incredible Phillies fan, and a lawyer in Philadelphia as well. I wrote this book. This is mine. And the reason why I wrote this book, really, it came to me in various different ways. I'm the faculty director of the Arlen Specter Center. And as part of that, there it is, right there, the Arlen Specter Center. And by the way, the book is published by University of Pittsburgh Press and is available for popular prices. Anyway, that's the Arlen Specter Center. It was opened up some time ago. Arlen Specter was a neighbor of ours in the area. He was friends with our president then, Stephen Spinelli. And the senator had a very long, illustrious career in Pennsylvania, ranging 30 years, one of the longest serving senators. And he donated his papers, which were voluminous, I believe it was over 2,000 boxes, covering every single possible topic you could possibly think of. So in order to organize this in a way that people can access it, read it, understand his legacy, what he was involved with, we partnered with the University of Pittsburgh in order to properly put this all together in an archive. And working with the Karen Albert, who's here, and Sarah Slade and others, and the people of the University of Pittsburgh, we put together an incredible archive of the senator's career. And you can actually access it in the internet. It's very well organized and searchable. And as a result of that, we organized a facsimile office, which you see here. Senator Specter was very big about taking pictures, but unlike most people who take selfies where nothing is happening other than the selfie, things were actually happening in these pictures. And my job at the beginning, when the Specter Center was open, is to take people on a tour. And of course, they went into this room, they always asked the same question. Who are those people and what's going on? It was always the same question. So we investigated who they were. We identified every single person, but that's interesting. But more importantly is what's going on in those pictures. And when we looked deeply into them, we found out that some of the most important issues in American history were going on, and Arlen Specter had a very big hand in what was happening. So these are not pictures of Senator Specter with famous people, rather they're pictures of history going on at that very moment, important world and American history. For example, one of them is this picture here. You might see is with Senator Specter and Yasser Arafat in front of a very big poster. Oh, what's he doing in front of this poster? And it's a picture of Clinton and Yasser Arafat in the poster. And it turned out that this poster, and you'll have to read the book on this because I'm not going to give the full story, but this poster led to one of the incidents where peace stayed in the Mideast. It was almost lost, but because of this poster and Senator Specter owning it and having a real conversation between two individuals instead of two enemies, that peace stayed in the Mideast, at least for that time. But for the full story, you'll have to read the chapter on that. But anyway, these are the chapters that I based on the different pictures I found and the stories behind each one of these pictures. We, of course, deal with one of the most important things the senator did was the confirmation hearing of Robert Bork for Supreme Court Justice. Senator Specter was opposed to that, even though he was a Republican, and even though he promised President Reagan, a Republican, that he would vote for his choices. He went against that promise because he didn't think Bork was qualified, and that was a big deal. And what came from that? The Anita Hill hearings with Clarence Thomas, also very complicated situation where I explain that in detail. Iran-Contra, something I teach in conspiracy classes. You guys know about that. And Senator Specter was heavily involved. And you can see various different things from the Clinton impeachment. But the one I'm going to highlight here, because it deals with the subject of my talk, is the stimulus fund. In our country right now, we really have an impasse. We have two teams, the red team and the blue team, instead of one team, which is the United States. And instead of working together for the best interests of all of our citizens, we are working against each other, which cannot last well and cannot end up well. And what I'm giving here is a perfect example of a politician who went against party, didn't stay with his team, and instead did what he thought was best for the constituents of Pennsylvania and the world, as you will see. And it cost him dearly. But sometimes people have to be brave. Sometimes they have to stand up. And this, to me, was a very impressive part of Senator Specter's history. So this is the chapter. It's called The Stimulus. And for those of you who have forgotten, back in 2007, 2006, there was a housing bubble where the prices of housing were going through the roof and everyone was making money, but like all bubbles, it burst. And as a result of that, our economy exploded in a very bad way. And when the United States goes down, the world goes down. And it was panic across age-old firms like Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers were out of business. AIG, one of the biggest insurers in the world, was on the verge of bankruptcy. The world was on the verge of a severe depression. And at this very moment, as you could see from the chart, the value of people went from 70 trillion household net worth way down to 50 trillion. That's a loss of $15 trillion. That's a lot of money that's burned up. So we were in trouble. We were in serious trouble at that point. And in that history, Obama was at that point taking over for George Bush. He just got elected president. So Obama walks into this situation of United States disaster and world disaster economically. President Obama had an idea. It's called the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or the ARRA, which is known as the stimulus. Put money into the economy, put government money into the economy, and that will stimulate spending, get people out buying things again, and we have a recovery. So you can see from the chart, government gives money, households get money, business gets, everyone does well as a result of it. It's called Keynesian economics. You put money out there, it generates more money. He had a bill. And he had controlled the Senate and the House. So that looks like he could pass it, right? He's got Democratic Senate, Democratic House, easy, right? No, because here's the problem. The problem is the filibuster. A senator, this is a filibuster. You can get up as a senator and just speak. Ted Cruz did that recently. I think he started reading Green Eggs and Ham. You just get up there and just blurt syllables. You don't even have to say anything worthwhile, but you keep talking and talking and talking. What's the point of that? Because if you don't stop talking, the vote never happens. So even though the House passed the bill, the Senate cannot pass the bill if these people don't stop talking. How do you make them stop talking and pass the bill? Well, at that point, you had 58 Democrats, 42 GOP. You think it's easy, but no, because you can't stop the filibuster unless you get a cloture. Cloture is, if you get a vote for cloture, that means filibuster is over. That's it. Now we vote on the bill. That's the end of this nonsense. And now we vote on this bill. But you need 60 votes. And how many votes do we have as the Democrats? 58. Can't get a cloture. Can't stop the filibuster. So what are you going to do? We're stuck. Now, you have to look at what's going on. This is President Obama actually making this speech, and this is Senator Specter. And at this point, this is what goes, this is from my book. On January 27, 2009, Obama spoke to the Senate about the need for this stimulus, the ARA, urging Congress pass this bill by February 13th before they leave, because they go on recess, and if you don't have the vote by then, more damage is going to get done. He solicited questions from the senators, which is really weird. You're really very rare times as a president say to the senators, anyone have any questions? Very rarely happens. And of course, the first person to speak was Senator Specter. And he says, why the urgency? What's going on? And Obama said, the economy is so precarious, we cannot wait. The country was heading to a catastrophe and needed stimulus now to avert a 1930s type depression, perhaps a world economic collapse. This is on the line. This is the foundation of things. One, Ohio Senator George Voinovich, this is what he said regarding Obama. If he was for it, we had to be against it. I just want you to take that in. If he's for it, we have to be against it. Now remember, the world is on the edge of economic collapse. And here is a solution, an attempt to stop it, to stop the collapse, to stop the bleeding, to stop people losing jobs, to stop the economy from tanking. And their response, if he is for it, we're against it. Mitch McConnell, who is then minority leader, said the single most important thing we want to achieve is for President Obama to be the one-term president. Not that we want to save the country, save the world, save the economy. No, it was to bring down President Obama's presidency. So this is what the Republican Party wants. This is their leader, Mitch McConnell, saying, this is what we want. Make Obama a failure as a president. More foundation. Specter was a bit different than his other GOP members. He didn't believe that much in the red and blue team. He looked more at policy and what was best for his constituents. And he would travel a lot of times to every single district in PA to talk to different people, to see what they wanted, to be in touch with the people he represented. He believed he represented Pennsylvania. He didn't represent the GOP, which is Pennsylvania's. And his very good friends, the now president right here, Joe Biden, very close friends. And they, Democrat, Republican, very close friends. The thought of that right now may be mind-boggling to you younger people. My God, two best friends, and they're on the opposite side? How could that be? How could that be? Well, they were. And what helped a lot is in Washington, they often would travel on the same train together, going home. After different legislative sessions, they get on the Amtrak. And this is what Biden said. And listen to this in light of what we know now, how different, it's almost weird hearing these words. According to Biden, they really disagreed. Wow, a Democrat and Republican. But when they did, one way we work it out is Specter says to me, look, I'll meet you on the train. I have all the stuff and we'll have an hour and a half and go over it. And let me make my case to you. And I'll do the same to him. And according to Specter, nobody in the Senate has talked as much as these two have talked. They talked. They didn't fight. They talked. Sometimes they agree. Negotiation, not warfare. So, what is Specter going to do? Will he vote for cloture to end this filibuster so that the Senate bill can be voted upon, or is he going to go party line? What is he going to do? So he actually brought it to his family, and Shannon Specter, who's here today, was one of the people very much involved in this decision. And the family reached the consensus that supporting the stimulus, the ARRA, was a good idea, but politically, it would be somewhere between bad and disastrous. Why? Remember what McConnell said? If he's for it, we're against it. Okay? He's going against the party. Shannon Specter advised there are some things that are more important than getting reelected. Perhaps saving the world economy is more important than your job. This is according to Washington Post article written by Senator Specter. This is what he said. The United States is facing a far deeper crisis in 3 to 6 months. By then, the course of action will be much greater or maybe too late. Specter was disturbed by wave after wave of bad economic news, which he feared created its own psychology of fear and lowered expectations. Because as we know with economics, if you think things are bad, you don't spend. And if you don't spend, people go out of work. they don't spend, and it becomes a domino that just goes across, which is terrible. The eyes and the ears of the world are upon the United States. Failure to act would be devastating, not just for Wall Street and Main Street, for much of the rest of the world. So Specter saw this as being a critical thing. But as his son advised, if you're going to do this, it's going to be political suicide for you. So he talked. These are pictures from the Specter Center from my book. This is Specter and Obama actually talking about this issue. When I told you about they're not selfies, there's real stuff going down here. And here's the Super Bowl party hosted by the Obamas, and there's Senator Specter and his wife Joan at the party. And Obama spent time, I'm sure, talking about why the ARRA has to be passed. And as a result, because Specter was so respected, he decided it's best for the world, for Pennsylvania, for the United States, that the stimulus has to be passed. And when he said, I'm going to vote for cloture, he then went to Senator Olympia Snowe, also a Republican, and to Susan Collins, also a Republican, and convinced them, because he would only be 59, he convinced them to vote for cloture. And as a result, 58 became 61. And as a result, cloture happened, the filibuster was over, and the stimulus was passed. There is no question that the stimulus would not have been passed had Specter not did what he did. Absolutely no question about that. What happened? Well, it was a disaster. And I love how Specter describes this. He says, a giant sucking sound, my political career going south. But he knew that. That was not a surprise. He was warned of that. But he still did what he thought was right. There's a lesson in this. And if only more people would do that now. Immediately after the vote, Specter was met with scorn. Protesters showed up. Conservative talk show hosts slammed them. You know who they are. Even by radio host Laura Ingraham. How can you in good conscience move forward and support this senator? Because he was going against party. Specter's approval rate went down 30 points. But he knew that. This is not a surprise. He knew this was a very reasonable possibility that he would suffer. But he did what he thought was right. So Specter, who always viewed himself as a centrist, was not happy with the new people coming in, which he referred to them as brash. People more concerned with party over policy. He wrote a book, A Life Among Cannibals, which is a book about this happening. He was not happy about the change that he saw. People far more interested in winning as opposed to doing the right thing. And as a result, he was termed, the word you hear a lot now, Rhino, which is Republican in name only, R-I-N-O. And his career in the Republican Party ended. But you have to admire this because he had the bravery to move forward and to take the risk and do what's right. What I'd like to do is I'd just like to read an end to this because I think it's a nice thing, and I'll open it for questions. This is from the book. Senator Specter suffered terribly in his last years from cancer. He constantly fought it, did well, rebound, and of course have it again. And he ultimately died of cancer. But I think this is a great ending to someone's career. It says the Specter-Obama connection persisted to the end. One especially poignant moment that revealed the relationship occurred in 2012 when Specter was gravely ill and in the hospital, suffering from end stages of cancer, which he had fought bravely for many years. He received a call from the president. The call was not only to wish him well, but also to seek Specter's help and advice on important issues concerning Syria. The senator's family saw this gesture as a strong sign of respect that even in his final hours, Specter was still called upon by the president to serve his country. And remember, it's a Democratic president calling a Republican senator for advice. And this is the way it should be. And I think that's a nice way to talk about the career. And finally, the last thing I'd like to say, and promoting our archive as well, the photographs at the Arlen Specter Center at Jefferson University tell many stories. When you walk into the historic building and climb the 200-year-old steps to enter into the recreated office of the late senator, numerous photographs welcome you. I have told you of stories of the pictures but many more still exist. What's going on there? For example, why are there so many pictures of the Assad family in Syria? And exactly what's the nature of Specter's relationship with them, and how did it influence American policy? Why was Specter meeting with Pakistan's Minister Bhutto? And did her assassination really take place shortly after the meeting? What was Specter talking about with Libya's dictator Gaddafi? And why were they standing by a tent of all things, a huge tent in the back? What exactly did Arlen Specter's investigation reveal about the FBI at Ruby Ridge? The stories of United States and world history remain to be explored. So I invite you, come to the center, visit the archives, treasures await you. Thank you. I open it up to any questions that you might have. Any questions? As David Pumpkins would say, any questions? Yes.
So we talked about how big of a deal it was for Specter to make that decision. What do you think it's going to take for, I feel like we're further now than we were then as far as like the bipartisan line. So what do you think it's going to take for people to like reach across the aisle again and like talk rather than?
Many times it just takes one person to be brave. One person to break it. No matter what side they are on, to say, hey, listen, enough of this. Let's just sit down, look at the problems our country has, and solve it. We may not agree 100%. I was a trial lawyer, as you know, for a long time. Many times both sides disagree, but you go in, many times you settle, because you go in the room, you respect each other, and you say, okay, this is what I got, this is what you got. Perhaps we could find a middle ground. Many times, just one brave person. That's what I'm hoping for, to break this. Any other questions? That's a good question, yeah.
When do you think, or what do you think caused, like, especially in recent years, such a divide between the two parties?
Yeah, I'm going to plug the upcoming talk with Mike Smerconish. He's going to get into that very much on November 1st. But it's a combination of many things. Social media, 24-hour news, social wars. I mean, there's many different things. I think the internet is really one of the main things. But that doesn't mean we can't fix it. It really, because we have to. Sometimes we have no choice. Any other questions? Yeah.
Excuse me. Do you believe that there are any current candidates that have a personality or pull to like take up the mantle of being willing to like work across the aisle and try and mend the divide between the two parties?
That's a hard one. The only thing I can say is a lot of times people you don't know that the media hasn't focused on yet rise up. I really didn't know who Obama was until really closer in time. There are many younger people out there. I really don't know, but it's a matter of need, Sheldon. It has to happen because we cannot go on like this. So I don't know. I'm just hoping.
Thank you.
But you would better. Hey, Roger.
Do you think Specter would have gone against his party if it was earlier in his political career?
He went against his party many times in his political career. He went against his party on Robert Bork, and that's much earlier. He went against his party in Philadelphia when he supported LGBTQ rights. He went against his party on stem cell research. So this is not the only time. So I would say, yes, depending on if he believed the policy was right. Yeah, it's proven by what he did with Bork. Yes.
Yeah, I just have a thought on that. First of all, Evan, your talk is terrific and the book is great. I recommend the book to all of you. It's just an outstanding book. But on the question about what he would have done at an earlier point in his career, I think that Evan is right. He would have voted for the stimulus. But I think he entertained some doubts about that. He said to me during this very difficult decision, he said that he wondered whether he'd have the same view of this if he were 59 and not 79. So he was self-aware enough that he could concede to himself that motivations are mixed and while you'd always want to do the right thing for the state and for the country, it's inevitable that your own view of your career and your job is going to enter into the mix. And so he conceded in this dialogue that he at least wondered about. But inevitably, I think Evan's right, because when he was 59, he did other things that were of a similar nature. Perhaps not quite as grave in dimension, but very close.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, some more from the internet.
From Sam Weeks, was there a comparable vote to the 2009 stimulus that is talking party that Specter cast early in his career?
Yeah, I would say the Bork vote,
Work vote, yeah,
absolutely,
that's good.
and the stem cell research votes.
Yeah, yeah.
The Republican Party was strongly against stem cell research, strongly against it. And when he was a member of the Republican Party, he fought viciously, really, for stem cell research to be funded by the federal government.
And you had Michael J. Fox supporting
Yeah,
it.
right. He had Michael J. Fox, Parkinson's Foundation. He had Mary Tyler Moore from the diabetes. He had Muhammad Ali
That's right.
behind him. But still, that wasn't enough to move them. But he tried. He really tried hard. Yeah, Candace.
So Arlen Specter voting for the stimulus bill being so like disastrous for his political career, if he was like willing to like go across like party lines and has done that before, like why was like what was like the straw that broke the camel's back for this?
The Republican Party changed in some way. There still were moderates in the Republican Party. So there still was, even though he got a lot of blowback for voting against Bork, a lot. Even got death threats from his own party congressman, sent him death threats. I have a letter from the archive that from, I forgot the name of the congressman, but he said, don't come into my district anytime soon because it's shooting season. Okay, that's from a congressman, not from a nut. Well, who knows? But anyway, yeah, he did. But at that point, the Republican Party had a very strong moderate middle. So that's why he was able to survive. But as the Republican Party changed, there was no place for him. And that's when he was labeled a rhino, Republican in name only. Yes, Tom.
So I don't know if this is a question, but when you said that Arlen Specter saw himself as representing state of Pennsylvania in the political party, and it made me think, well, he's a senator, so he has to get votes from across the state as a representative. District with pressure to represent. During that conservative district, then you got a good incentive to vote conservative in that class. But in like a swing state like Pennsylvania, I think that there's more room for moderation and kind of find a middle ground. But it doesn't seem like that's happening right now. It seems like the party pressure is still there and
Well, it's interesting because Smarkanish, again, plugging the talk. What he says is that most people are really in the middle. He says across the country. Because the problem is that the media on both sides dramatize both ends. And the people who go out to vote are the passionate on the left and right. And one of the students asked whether there's a solution. I was showing them galvanizing those people in the middle to go out and vote so they don't only have 50% voting. Instead, we have 60, 70% voting, where more the people in the middle go out and vote as opposed to the passionate right and left side. So I think that's what happens in some states. That's an answer, or you didn't ask a question, so I'll make a comment as well. Right, a comment right back at you, Tom. Anyone else? Yes, Karen.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
So from our archives friend, Ed Galloway.
Hey, Ed. Yeah.
Can you talk about the process of using the Specter archive to write your book?
Yes, I had very good luck in dealing with the people over there. But I went through the boxes. I mean, they're there. The letters are there. How did I find that letter? The death letter? I found it going through the boxes. It's very well organized. You could find it, and there they are. I found another letter from a Pennsylvania Republican leader who said to him, "You're a dead duck." It's written all in caps. It's like one of the scariest letters like you'll get from a serial killer, but it's from a Republican leader. "You're a dead duck. You're done all in." I'm gonna go on and on. And that makes, I would have found that. It makes for great storytelling in the book. You go through, it's all there. organized in an excellent manner. The people did a great job. We worked very closely with them. We had a great working relationship with them. And you could find stuff, and he was involved in everything. He wasn't one of those CNN or Fox people that talk a lot and do nothing. He actually did a lot of things. If you want to go on a website, look at how many bills he sponsored, how many bills were passed by him. It's incredible. So whatever you're interested in, you could find it in the archive, seriously. Anything else? One more.
I had two more. You think we should-
Two more, and that's it.
That's it, okay.
Okay.
From
Yeah.
do you think that term limits would help or hinder working across the aisle? That's it.
I would love term limits, it's
Would you?
personal, because I think people could spend more time governing than fundraising.
Yeah.
And I think when you're beholden to election after election, especially two-year congressmen, you care more about fundraising than doing your job.
That's fair.
So that's what I think, at least.
And another question from Sam Weeks, what from Specter's biography or upbringing led to this bipartisan inclination? If you were alive today, would you propose anything based on his experience that would lead to, I guess, with less political antagonism?
Well, I'd like to advertise another thing from the Specter Center. We actually have undergraduate fellowships, and one of our undergrad fellows is here today, Georgia. And Georgia wrote a beautiful paper on the fact that Senator Specter was Jewish, brought up in a primarily non-Jewish neighborhood state, and how his going up as the outsider in a neighborhood, in a state, made him more sensitive to the needs of other people who are outsiders. So I get that research from Georgia Scusa, so thank you very much, Georgia. Okay, and she gave me a thumbs up. She's not okay. So that is a great way to end by giving a student a shout out. So thank you very much. I want to thank Shane and Specter for coming and adding to this. Thank you very much, University of Pittsburgh.